Imagine a tank. I don't mean a modern Abrams tank or, anything with treads. I want you to picture a living, breathing, biological fortress.
Okay.
Now take that tank and drop it into the roughest, most dangerous neighborhood in the history of the planet.
Right, so we're talking about Western North America.
At the very end, right?
Right at the bitter end of the Cretaceous period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Hell Creek Formation. And Hell Creek is, well, it's a pretty accurate description. It's 66 to 68 million years ago. It's humid. It's swampy.
And the neighbors are absolute nightmares.
You've got Triceratops behaving like a bad-tempered rhino, and the landlord is a fully grown Tyrannosaurus rex.
It's the ultimate survival test. And the creature we're diving into today, the Ankylosaurus, was basically the evolutionary answer to that specific problem.
I feel like everyone knows this dinosaur, or at least we think we do. It's a staple of the plastic toy collection.
Oh, for sure.
You know the one? Squat, bumpy back, club on the tail. Usually painted some weird shade of green or brown.
Right, it's iconic.
But our mission today is to take that plastic toy and just throw it out the window. Because when you actually look at the source material, the biomechanics, the fossils, the latest research, this thing wasn't just a rock with legs.
Not at all. It was a physiological marvel.
It really was.
And what's fascinating here is that despite being so famous, Ankylosaurus is actually a ghost. It's one of the most mysterious dinosaurs out there.
Really?
We have to do a serious amount of detective work just to figure out how it lived.
Well, let's start with the name. It sounds heavy. Ankylosaurus magniventris.
It does.
It sounds like a spell you'd cast to make someone gain weight.
It's close.
Yeah.
So if you break it down, Ankylosaurus translates to fused lizard, or sometimes crooked lizard. It comes from the Greek word ankylosis.
Which is a medical term, right? Like when your joints lock up.
Precisely. It refers to stiffness produced by the fusion of bones. This animal was not built for yoga.
Okay.
It was built for absolute rigidity. And the species name, magniventris, that translates simply to great belly.
Fused lizard, great belly. That is honest.
It's descriptively accurate. It refers to the massive width of the body. This animal was wide, low to the ground, and built like a brick bunker.
So we have this great belly tank living alongside T-Rex. But before we get into how it defended itself, I want to talk about how we found it.
Okay.
Because looking at the history here, it seems like we got this animal wrong for a long, long time.
We got it spectacularly wrong, and it starts with the legendary Barnum Brown.
The guy who found T-Rex.
The very same. In 1906, he was on an expedition for the American Museum of Natural History in Montana. He found the type specimen of Ankylosaurus, but, and this is the key, he didn't find the whole thing.
He found bits and pieces.
Enough to know it was something new, but not enough to know exactly what it looked like. So in 1908, they published a reconstruction of the animal. If you look at it today, it looks like a glitch in a video game.
How bad are we talking?
Well, Barnum Brown needed to fill in the missing gaps, so he used Stegosaurus as a model. He gave this poor Ankylosaurus a strongly arched back, like a frightened cat, and really thick, robust front legs. But the biggest miss, he missed the tail club completely.
Wait, the one thing everyone knows about Ankylosaurus is the club. He didn't include it.
He didn't find it with that specific skeleton. So for decades, the scientific image of this animal was this weird, spiked armadillo-stegosaur hybrid with a short, droopy little tail.
It looked defenseless.
Totally defenseless.
That is wild. It's like discovering a knight and forgetting to mention the sword.
It wasn't until a later expedition in 1910 found another specimen in Alberta that they realized, oh, wait, there's a massive sledgehammer attached to the end of this thing.
That completely changes the narrative.
Completely.
It goes from a passive, lumpy weirdo to a warrior. But this brings up something I was wondering about. Why was it so hard to find a whole one? I assumed museums were full of these guys.
Yeah, that is a huge misconception. Ankylosaurus fossils are incredibly rare. We don't have a single 100% complete skeleton. Not one.
You're kidding.
No. We are piecing this animal together from a handful of partial specimens, mostly the ones Brown found over a century ago.
Wow.
Compared to something like Triceratops, which we find all the time, Ankylosaurus is like finding a needle in a haystack.
That makes what we do know even more impressive. So let's try to build this beast properly using the modern science. How big is this thing?
It was the heavyweight champion of the Ankylosaurids. We are looking at an animal estimated to be between 6 and 8 meters long.
So that's roughly 20 to 26 feet.
Exactly. And weight.
Yeah.
Estimates vary, but we're looking at potentially 8 tons.
Okay, so that's heavier than a large African elephant.
Okay.
But an elephant is tall. This thing is, what, flat?
Think of a coffee table the size of a minivan. It was a quadruped, very low slung. And interestingly, the hind limbs were longer than the forelimbs.
So it's tilting forward.
A slight downward slope toward the head, yes, which puts that great belly right near the ground. But the reason it weighed 8 tons wasn't just fat. It was the armor.
The osteoderm.
The osteoderms.
I love that word. Bone skin.
Exactly. These aren't just scales sitting on top of the skin like a lizard. These are bones growing inside the skin. But here is where the engineering gets really interesting.
How so?
If you were to just grow a thick plate of solid bone, you'd have a problem.
It would be too heavy.
Heavy, yes, but also brittle. Think about ceramic. It's hard, but if you hit it with a sledgehammer or a T-Rex jaw,
It shatters.
it shatters.
So how did Ankylosaurus solve that?
Biological composite materials. If you cut one of these armor plates open, they were thin-walled. But, and this is the amazing part, they were strengthened by pads of collagen fibers woven directly into the bone tissue.
Woven into the bone, like
Oh.
rebar in concrete.
Even better. Think of Kevlar or modern ballistic armor. In biology, we call them Sharpie's fibers. This collagen is elastic, so when a T-Rex bites down, the bone doesn't just crack.
The collagen absorbs the energy.
It absorbs and distributes it. It made the armor lightweight, well, relatively lightweight, but incredibly durable.
That is amazing. It's literally wearing a bulletproof vest.
A bite-proof vest, certainly. And the arrangement of this armor is actually a hot topic. We know they had cervical half rings.
Wait for what?
Imagine a heavy bone yoke around the neck, like a collar.
Okay.
But paleontologists are still arguing about exactly how the rest of the armor sat on the back. You have researchers like Kenneth Carpenter proposing one layout, and others like Victoria Arbour and Philip Currie proposing another.
So even the map of the armor is still being drawn.
We're still moving the puzzle pieces around, but we do know one thing for sure. The face was not a weak spot.
The skull was armored too.
Completely. It's called capitiguli cranial ornamentation. Basically, as the Ankylosaurus grew up, the outer surface of its skull bones remodeled into these tile-like structures.
Mhm.
It actually obliterated the sutures between the bones.
So the skull became one solid helmet.
A seamless helmet. No weak points. Even the eyelids had bone plates.
It had bone eyelids.
Armored shutters for its eyes.
Okay, so we have the shield, the fused lizard part. Now we need to talk about the weapon, the club. Because in the cartoons, it's just a bowling ball on a string. But looking at the notes, the physics of this thing are terrifying.
It's a sophisticated weapon system. It's not just a rock. First, you have the club itself, which wasn't a perfect ball. It was composed of 2 massive osteoderms on the sides, like huge lobes, with a row of smaller ones down the middle.
But here's my question. If I swing a 100-pound weight at the end of a long tail, wouldn't I just snap my own spine? Or at least break the tail?
That is the engineering challenge. And Ankylosaurus solved it with the handle.
A handle.
The last 7 vertebrae of the tail were highly modified. They were interlocked and often fused co-ossified.
There's that fusion again.
Right. And on top of that, they had ossified tendons running along the tail.
Wait, ossified tendons, you mean the soft tissue turned to bone?
Yes. Imagine the cables in a suspension bridge, but they've turned into solid steel rods. This created a completely rigid handle, so when the animal swung its hips, that force was transmitted instantly to the club without the tail buckling or bending.
So it's not a whip, it's a mace. A rigid mace.
Exactly. And for a while, scientists debated, was this actually a weapon? Or was it a decoy?
A decoy. Like, hey, Mr. T-Rex, bite this hard thing instead of my head.
That was a theory back in 1993 by Tony Solborn. He thought it looked like a dummy head to lure predators.
I mean, evolution's weird, but building a rigid bone handle and a massive club just to look like a fake head seems like a lot of effort for a bluff.
And that's where most paleontologists land today. The weapon theory is the preferred one. Studies on the mechanics suggest the tail could swing 100 degrees laterally.
That is a huge range of motion.
It is, and the impact force.
Yeah.
We've run the models. It was sufficient to break the metatarsal bones of a large theropod.
The metatarsals, yeah, that's the ankle, right? The foot.
The foot and ankle bones, yes. So imagine a T-Rex stalking an Ankylosaurus. The tank pivots, swings that rigid handle, and crack. It shatters the T-Rex's leg.
And a T-Rex with a broken leg
Is a dead T-Rex. It can't hunt, it starves. This was a lethal defense. But here's a nuance that I love. This seems to be an adult adaptation. When we find juvenile ankylosaurs, their clubs aren't fully ossified. They're soft. They wouldn't have been able to deliver that bone-crushing blow.
So the kids had to hide, but the adults could stand and fight.
It suggests the weapon developed as they reached maturity, which also leads to another theory. Maybe they didn't just use them on T-Rex.
But on each other.
Maybe they used them on each other. Interspecific combat.
Fighting for mates or territory.
Exactly.
That is a scary thought. 2 8-ton tanks swinging bone maces at each other's flanks. The sound of that impact must have been thunderous.
It would have been visceral.
Speaking of sound and senses,
Yeah.
we have to talk about the skull again. Because when I was reading through the anatomy section, the thing that stood out to me wasn't just the armor. It was the nose.
The nose is the key to understanding how truly weird this animal was.
Paint the picture for us. What did this dinosaur's face look like?
Okay, so picture a triangular skull, wider than it is long. It has these horns pointing backward and down from the Cheats-Jugal horns. But the snout underwent what paleontologists call an extreme transformation.
Extreme compared to what?
Compared to its relatives, and really to most animals. In almost every dinosaur, the nostrils face forward. You breathe in, air goes back. Simple.
Right.
In Ankylosaurus, the nostrils face sideways and downward.
That seems inefficient.
It gets stranger. Inside the snout, the nasal passages didn't just go straight to the lungs, they looped.
They looped?
Think of a trombone slide crammed inside the skull. The nasal chambers were elongated, twisted, and looped around.
Okay, why? Nature doesn't usually build complex plumbing for no reason. What is the benefit of having a trombone in your nose?
There are two main hypotheses, and they might both be true. The first is heat and water balance.
Like a radiator.
Exactly. Remember, this is a massive animal in a warm environment. By lengthening the passage, you increase the surface area of the mucous membranes. This allows the animal to modify the temperature of the air before it hits the lungs.
So it cools the air down.
Or warms it up. But more importantly, it helps reclaim moisture. When you breathe out, you lose water. If you have a long, looping nasal passage, you can trap that moisture before it leaves the body. For a big animal, staying hydrated is a constant battle.
That makes sense. It's an AC unit and a humidifier. This is the second theory.
Sound.
The trombone effect.
Right. Those loops could act as a resonance chamber. This would allow Ankylosaurus to produce low-frequency sounds.
So instead of a high-pitched screech, we're talking
What?
A bass drop.
A deep, rumbling hum, something you might feel in your chest more than you hear.
That is incredibly cool.
Mm.
And did all this remodeling mess up their sense of smell?
Quite the opposite. The olfactory region was pushed to the side to make room for the loops, but it was huge. Some researchers suggest they might have had stereo olfaction.
Smelling in stereo. Meaning they can tell which nostril the smell was coming from.
Potentially. It would allow them to pinpoint the direction of a predator or a delicious fern with incredible accuracy.
So let's look at the full package. We have a tank with a bone-crushing tail, a radiator in its nose, and a super sniffer. What was fueling this biological machine?
Ferns. Lots and lots of ferns.
It seems so underwhelming for such a beast.
It was a herbivore, obviously, but the shape of the muzzle tells us how it ate. It had a very broad beak.
Which usually means it wasn't picky, right?
Correct. If you have a narrow snout, you can reach in and pick specific tasty leaves. If you have a broad snout like Ankylosaurus, you are a lawnmower.
You're a non-selective browser.
You're a vacuum cleaner, basically. It would just sweep that head back and forth and grab everything near the ground.
And the teeth.
Tiny, leaf-shaped, smooth-sided, and honestly pathetic relative to the body size.
So 8 tons of animal, tiny teeth. They weren't chewing their food much.
No chewing, they were just stripping and swallowing. And that leads us back to the great belly. To process all that unchewed fibrous vegetation, they likely relied on hindgut fermentation.
The fermentation tank.
Literally. The massive rib cage suggests a huge digestive system where bacteria would break down the cellulose. It would have been a gas factory.
So majestic as it was walking around burping and farting methane constantly.
It probably smelled terrible, yes.
Now, I read a really weird theory in the notes about digging. Can we touch on that? Because looking at this tank, I don't see a burrower.
This is one of those, wait, what? Theories.
Yeah.
Some paleontologists have looked at the snout structure, specifically the way the rostrum is shaped, and noticed it shares similarities with digging animals, like blind snakes.
Blind snake.
Yeah. The theory is that Ankylosaurus might have used that shovel-shaped face to dig for roots or tubers. Some have even gone out on a limb and suggested they could have been omnivorous, maybe digging for grubs or insects.
An omnivorous tank. That's terrifying.
It's speculative, But it shows that we shouldn't pigeonhole these animals just because they look like cows.
So where did this animal live? We said Hell Creek, but that's a big place.
This connects back to why the fossils are so rare. The rarity suggests they might have lived in upland areas.
Upland meaning
The hills.
away from the rivers.
Exactly. Fossilization usually happens in lowlands where rivers flood and bury things in mud. Upland environments are erosional, things break down and disappear. If Ankylosaurus preferred the hills, fewer of them would get buried.
So they were mountain men.
In a sense, and interestingly, it didn't overlap much with Edmontonia.
Yeah.
Edmontonia was a nodosaur, another type of armored dinosaur living at the same time. But Edmontonia seems to have preferred the lowlands.
So they split the map.
Niche partitioning. They stayed out of each other's way. Edmontonia in the swamp, Ankylosaurus in the high ground.
Let's pivot to how the world sees Ankylosaurus. Because as we said, it's an icon. I remember seeing pictures of the 1964 World's Fair sculpture. That really cemented the image for a generation.
It did. But here is the contradiction. Ankylosaurus is the most famous member of its family, but scientifically, it is actually the weird cousin.
How so?
It has features like those side-facing nostrils and the specific arrangement of the armor that aren't seen in its relatives like Euoplocephalus.
Ah.
So we use Ankylosaurus as the example for the whole group, but it's actually bizarre and not very representative.
That is funny. It's like using a platypus to explain mammals.
Oh, yes.
Mammals lay eggs and have bills.
A little bit, yes. And then, of course, there's Jurassic Park.
We have to touch on the movies.
The movies love Ankylosaurus,
Yeah.
but they almost always get the physics wrong. They show them running fast and swinging their tails wildly like flexible whips.
And we know that's wrong because of the handle.
Right. As we discussed, the tail was rigid, the swing was calculated, and the animal was heavy. It wasn't galloping.
Also, the movie ones always have those huge spikes sticking out of the sides.
Which looks very cool, I admit. But those spikes actually belong to nodosaurs. Ankylosaurus didn't have long lateral spikes. It relied on the flat, heavy armor and the club.
So the movie version is a Frankenstein monster of different dinosaurs.
It's a best-of compilation of armored dinosaur features, not a real Ankylosaurus.
You know, reality is a bit more grounded, but honestly, I think the real version is more impressive.
I agree completely.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone from a plastic toy to a physiological marvel.
We have. When you look at Ankylosaurus now, I don't want you to see a slow, dumb rock. I want you to see a 6-ton fermentation tank with a bulletproof vest made of bone-woven collagen.
And a nose that looped like a trombone.
It's a testament to how evolution solves problems. The problem was how to survive the most dangerous predators in history, and the solution was this incredible architecture.
It really is incredible. And here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. We talked about how rare these fossils are.
They're so rare.
For every Triceratops or T-Rex we find, Ankylosaurus is a ghost. So imagine the late Cretaceous landscape. We picture it crowded with dinosaurs. But maybe Ankylosaurus was a solitary wanderer. Maybe it kept to the misty hills, away from the herds in the valleys.
I can picture that.
And maybe, just maybe, it was making those low-frequency sounds that reverberated through those nasal loops. A deep, thrumming call that would have terrified a rival, but a sound that we will never actually hear.
That is a haunting and beautiful image. A silent giant in the mist.
If you want to see just how far science has come, I encourage you to go online and look up the original 1908 reconstruction by Barnum Brown, the one with the arched back and no club, and compare it to what we know today.
It's night and day.
It really is. It's worth a search.
Definitely.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.